consider firm for village attorney and prosecutor services and possible ordinance amendments.
So to start this off, we released an RFP. We received one submission for village attorney from Carvalho Carlson, and we received two for prosecutor services. One from Carvalho Carlson, the other from Husband and Bean. A collective group met to review those submissions, which included the public safety chair, Trustee Warren, myself, the court clerk, police chief Nimmer, finance director Manuelson, and President Rozek. It was the recommendation from the group to proceed for both village attorney and prosecution services with Carvalho Carlson.
Oh, sure. We were comfortable, the village attorney, we only received one response, which is Carvalho Carlson. For the village prosecutor services, we're comfortable that both firms could do the work. They both seemed very qualified to do the work. The difference was price point. We checked with Chief Nimmer, who was very satisfied with Carvalho Carlson's performance. So based on price point, that was really the differentiating factor. So we're recommending moving forward with Carvalho Carlson for both sides of it, both village attorney and village prosecutor services.
I would make a motion to approve Carvalho Carlson for village attorney and village prosecutor services.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion, Trustee Mentor?
I did a little looking around, and I looked at Whitefish Bay, Davis, and the firm West Davis and Cal or something.
Davis and Keelthau?
Yeah, do Whitefish Bay. Mequon had a different firm, so it's not like the only firm that does this kind of work is Carvalho Carlson. So I don't, do you have, I guess whoever was involved with the RFP, do you have any idea why? I mean, there's a number of law firms that do this type of work. So it just seemed odd to me that we only received one. And I'm wondering if maybe they kind of don't want to poach each other's clients, so they just stay out of it, or what?
Well, one thing that the board should be aware of is that it did send this RFP to all of those firms, anyone who does the North Shore, as well as a number of the other communities, and
Right.
went and searched them out. So it was sent to a widespread group of people. One of the conversations I had with the individual from Houseman and Bean who submitted an application for prosecution specifically, I think maybe put it best. He specifically focused on prosecution only. So one of the questions I asked him is, I'm curious, why didn't you submit on village attorney services?
Mm-hmm.
And our discussion, was just pretty much listening to him reflect on, that's a pretty significant load of work. And so from a firm perspective, we want and are typically very selective about communities and workload when we go to seek other clients, because it is such an integral part of what we do. And his firm in particular, while he primarily focused on prosecution for a number of municipalities, and only occasionally filled in as a backup for purposes of village attorney, he had said that as a, for them specifically at this time of submission, they did not have the amount of depth within the firm to take on a client or a community, because it is, and that spoke to me because it was like, well, it is. It is significant. So unless you're going to be geared for it.
Yeah, and I would build on that point. I mean, my gut feeling is that it really comes down to a capacity issue. Even the larger firms probably only have one or two people who can do village attorney services. And, there's only so many, we meet at night, so there's probably only so many nights that person wants to give up. So I would suspect that that's why some of the numbers for the RFP responses were depressed. Because you have to have someone who's free, every second Monday night in order to provide the services and is willing to do that.
And for just another example, for some who reached out, they would go back and meet with their internal board or ownership group to make that collective decision on whether they were going to submit a proposal.
So you did have some firms talk to you about
Correct, we had
potentially-
one municipal law who submitted a letter in advance saying, we're gonna decline. But who reached out, you know, we talked, we worked with them on some other, matters because they all are also contracted through our insurer. So, you know, they reached out because they were familiar, you know, working, you know, with us and, but for firms, it's a big decision. Is what I learned
Yeah.
through the exercise of going through the process. I didn't think that it was minimized in the past, but I was grateful for the level of care that people took to look at it. Because, you know, it's a big part of how we function and receive advisement, and so you wanna make sure that anyone who is submitting, is ready to give you the time and the resources that you need.
Right.
So,
How many firms did you send it out to initially?
what was the number of it? I sent it to everyone who provides services currently to any North Shore community, and then I also did a number of ones surrounding us. Part of the feedback that I've heard from other municipalities when they do it is because you don't want to get charged travel time. So I pulled down on all the leagues vendors who were providing services in this area, meaning Milwaukee County, Waukesha, Ozaki, and pulled those names in, and then some of the other larger municipalities, just in Milwaukee County, to see where's the,
Yeah.
who's gonna, you know, who's gonna bite on this? So I wanted to create a diverse audience. Travel time is something that is noted with people, because you also don't want to be billed for someone driving an hour to a meeting, driving home an hour to a meeting. So just some of my takeaways from the experience. I'm sorry, I'm not even.
I mean, it just seems, so it sounds like you at least sent it to 10, maybe 20.
Mm-hmm.
And
I-
out of all of them, only one submitted a proposal. I mean, it just seems like,
Or not the easiest to deal with.
Any trustee comments?
is there like a possibility of a single proprietor? Someone who is on their own would, rather than being associated with one of these firms, just maybe somebody starting out, or who might have just put in as a single proprietor to do it?
Well, the RFP was on our website. It didn't need, I mean, I target, you know, a pretty good breadth just because I want to make sure that I'm getting responses. You know, but it is also available on our website and was advertised also through the league. They have a capability to post RFPs, so it's just kind of a standard practice where we'll post through them as well. So other people do have opportunities to see it if they're looking for this line of work and have an ability to respond.
Any more comments from the trustees?
Do we have a motion?
We do.
Okay.
We also have one comment from the public before we.
Okay.
Jeff Davidian, 4101 North Prospect. This is not about the selection of the village attorney, but the role the village attorney plays as village attorney. We had a trustee here some years ago who asked the village attorney whether it was okay for him to vote on a measure that his firm would profit from. And the village attorney, not this one, told him that it was okay. And so there is a misuse of the village attorney to give the okay to public officials who realize that there's something funny about what they're asking, but feel that they can get the village attorney to give the okay. There needs to be, in my opinion, since we pay for it, and because sometimes we can get hurt by this transaction, to have an ethical framework within which the village attorney gives the advice. For example, for a trustee to go to the village attorney and ask for advice about a personal issue is asking for something of value. from the village attorney. And the village attorney is going to feel obligated to pay, to give that thing of value to the trustee in order to maintain the relationship. So there needs to be, in my opinion, strict parameters within which the village attorney does the job and doesn't provide cover for questionable ethical activities.
Thank you.
I think if you look at the Attorney General's guidance to elected officials, we are supposed to contact the village attorney if we have a question on something like that. And I remember that situation, he did the analysis, looking at the statute versus and what the trustee's relationship was within his employment and stuff. So we are, if you have an ethical question or a financial potential conflict or anything like, you are to ask the village attorney for advice
Right.
before proceeding if you're unsure.
Yes.
Since Jeff Davidian, 41 over Prospect, with regards to your response, there are things that are okay and there are things that are best practices. And what we want to do is, number one, save the cost of a trustee going and asking, or anybody asking about a personal issue, if that public official has a question about his conduct, he go to his own lawyer. He doesn't have to go to the village attorney. There should not be approval, especially in the case that we know about, where somebody profits time after time by asking the approval of the village attorney who doesn't have the circumspectness to look at how it looks. It's the appearance of impropriety. That's it. Thank you.
Just
I'd like to call the question.
Motion to call the question. Do we have a sec? Do we have a second for it?
Second.
A second. So all those in favor of calling the question?
Aye.
Nay.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 5-1. So I guess we move right on to the motion on the floor, which is, Sarah, you have the,
Yep, to approve Camilla Carlson for village attorney and village prosecutor services.
so that being the motion, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 5-1.
So there's one other element of this item that I'd just like to get the board's direction on. One of the requests from the Public Safety Committee last fall, when we initially worked on the RP, so I'll refresh your memory, there is some language within the scope of the code that references this section. You know, we understood kind of with the new purchasing policy and the call for RFPs, we had looked at this portion of the ordinance in a while. It's specifically chapter 109-4 relative to village attorney. I think at the time that this was written, it contemplated having the village attorney be an employee of the municipality. It just seemed like a lot of the language was geared more towards that. And the Public Safety Committee had wanted to kind of know, had wanted to bring to the board, do we want to update this, refresh it, just to be reflective of what we're doing right now, which at the time it was written probably didn't contemplate the RFP process. One of the things that I discussed and actually asked the village president about, our President Rosick, was in this section and also in the village manager section, they say it refers to the appointment by the village board after having been recommended by the village president. And so I kind of asked how that had worked within the scope of the process before, so I kept them consistent to how they're reflected in our code. I will share that I did a review of the municipal codes of our neighboring communities in the North Shore, And just because it was a practice typical that I've seen in the other communities I work for, is that this position is typically serves at the pleasure of the board. So it was new, but if that's what's working for our community, that's great. So it kind of had it there. The rest of the language, I just took a stab at redlining some other minor areas. Just because one of the things that's been a little tough here in Shorewood is that there's been a number of our ordinances that haven't been updated in a while.
So quick question, I know you're looking for some direction on this. Is this something that should go back down to public safety to try? I have a couple further recommendations. you
Oh,
know,
great.
But I don't know if we want to kind of take the drafting process here, or just kick it back down to public safety and
However you would prefer to do
That would
it.
be great.
yeah, I'm happy to,
Great.
as the chair of the public
Can
safety.
I ask a question? So
Trustee
what, do we have a defined term for the contract we just, for Cordell Carlson?
Yes,
It is what?
through 2024.
Years.
We asked for,
Okay. Right.
so I can definitely put this on the list for public safety. And then we can go from there. I just wanted to know which way to go with it. Thank you.
Is it through this January of 2024 or the entire year of 2024?
I think it's 4-year term, so we do January. Is that right?
That's okay, I'll go, it's fine, let's move on.
Okay,
That was it?
okay.
So trustee McKay, thank you for taking any minutes.
Okay,
Motion to close session.
I'll move that we move into closed session pursuant to statute section 19.851C to discuss the annual performance evaluation of the village manager.
motion and a second from trustee McCaig. And this is a roll call vote.
Trustee Warren.
Aye.
Trustee Menta.
Aye.
Trustee McKay.